Welcome to the TMC Newsroom. My name's Rich Tehrani. Thanks for watching us today. On our program is Todd Abbott. He is the SVP of Global Sales and Marketing at Sonus. Todd, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here.
So I've known your company going back, gosh, it's scary, over 15 years now, or right about 15 years since your founding. You're a major player in the soft switch space as the transition went from traditional PSTN to IP networks, a core building block of many carrier networks. And your company's gone through an incredible transformation over the last decade and a half. And I thought we'd start off by just having you tell me about a little bit of that history and where you're headed.
Great. Yeah, we were really the early innovators to help service providers with technology to make that transition from PSTN, TDM technology, where there was a tremendous amount of capital invested that they frankly wanted to leverage for many years to come. Yet, how did they start to migrate to IP infrastructures and IP-based services? So that transition was a costly one for them. And the initial technology that we created was a media gateway to enable TDM, PSTN traffic to migrate over to IP while maintaining the investment in the legacy infrastructure that they had built up over the years. So it was a great technology for telcos to be able to move that migration. And then we early got into the SBC space because the next transition for telcos was to begin to consolidate voice and data traffic across the wide area. So introducing SBC capability on the IP side of a media gateway was the next transition for the company.
Now, this is an area of tremendous growth now for your company, right? You told me a little bit before off camera, just some of the stats of quarter-over-quarter growth in terms of how much of your business is in the SBC space. Tell me a little bit about why you're seeing that growth and what are you doing that's making customers go out and buy your products?
Yeah, so the advent of consolidation of voice and data, really primarily driven by some of the economic downturns, customers, whether it's telcos or enterprises, really challenged with how do I get more for my capital investment. And one of the areas that they clearly looked at was I've got voice trunks and voice traffic, I've got data networks and data traffic. I really couldn't afford as a telco to manage two networks. And SIP and SBCs as the enabler to enable voice and data to consolidate over the wide area really fit a need of both migration as well as leveraging their capital in a very tough market. Same thing happened over the last 3 or 4 years in the United States as well as in Western Europe as enterprises were looking at voice trunks and data trunks. How do I now consolidate and save money from a reoccurring expense with my telephone company, my telco, by consolidating those trunks? And again, SBCs are the enabling technology for voice. Once it runs over a data network, it requires a higher level of management to be able to manage the time latency requirements of voice. Everybody's familiar with the early voice over IP implementations, very jittery. It really was the reason why voice over IP has kind of stayed premise-based in a PBX for many, many years. SIP enables the carrier to manage the call flows of voice contained within a data IP world and be able to eliminate those latencies and enable voice to truly be IP-based end-to-end from enterprise to enterprise, consumer to enterprise, et cetera. So we're really in the early days of this transition, and so the demand for SBCs is going to continue to grow quite exponentially around the world as more and more voice runs on data infrastructure.
And there are two trends that are worth pointing out to the viewers. One is the sunsetting of the PSTN. We expect that sometime in the next potentially 5 to 10 years that in the US the PSTN will be just moved off of. It will no longer be updated. It will be closed down depending on who you talk to. That's a huge possibility. And then on top of that, and a huge opportunity, we would expect that the rest of the world will follow, if not lead, the US in moving to all IP networks. And on top of that, we also have the increasing levels of complexity of the communications, inter-office communications and intra-office communications. I was hoping you could touch on both of those in terms of just the market opportunity for the SBC space.
Sure. So the inflection point, one of the inflection points that's often used as a data point on this transition is the actual inventory of IP lines versus TDM lines. And in the US, that inflection point of being from an install base being more IP based actually happens in the next 2 or 3 years. From a net install every year, it's predominantly IP based. But the actual install base of IP lines now will exceed TDM lines in the US within the next 2 to 3 years, and in Western Europe within the same 2 to 3 year period. So this is becoming a very IP world, and we've been talking about it from an industry standpoint for decades. It's now very much past the inflection point. The next big wave, though, has to do with, now that I've got consolidation, is how do I start to now leverage what SIP was intended to do? So what it's been done to date, or what it's enabled to date, is that consolidation of voice and data. But what SIP was really designed to do was to move from a circuit-based world to a session world. And a session world has a whole different level of flexibility to the types of applications. Unified communication really are point applications today. You dial a different number for a video conference than you do for a voice conference, to a different server depending upon what application you want to get to. What SIP was designed to do was to enable a session to be able to dynamically change between voice to video, to introduce different applications like call recording, to introduce text, and also machine to machine. So SIP as an architecture was really designed to enable a new class of application. So the early introduction has all been about voice and data consolidation. The next phase is really about leveraging a new class of application and really unified communication, which has been more of an oxymoron. As that happens, the demand for SBC is only going to continue to grow for many years to come.
And so your vision, it seems, is to really enable cloud-based unified communications. Is that accurate?
That's exactly accurate. We believe that as the applications, the UC-based applications, start to become more prevalent and get deployed, the demand for the complexity at the edge of the network, which is what the SBC is going to become more challenging, more complex. And that fits very nicely into our heritage. Our experience, as you pointed out, is very much about scaling some of the largest telco infrastructures in the world with strong both TDM as well as IP, SBC-based traffic knowledge and scalability knowledge. So as the applications get deployed, it's going to require an ever-increasing demand of complex edge devices, SBCs, to manage the complex application portfolio of voice, video, data within one stream. And so our strategy is enable those applications at a more faster, rapid rate, and enable customers to start to deploy those new class of UC applications.
That's great. So what's next?
What's next is to really enable, well, what we've first done is we've taken our heritage and put it into a new product, announced the SBC 5100. It's taking our complex capability from a scale standpoint and putting it into a form factor for the enterprise. So the SBC 5100 brings a form factor and a price point, so an entry level box for customers that are just starting with SIP-based applications. You don't have a demand for lots and lots of sessions. You need an entry point. So we've introduced an entry point product that sits below our SBC 5200 that's been out for the last 18 months and doing well in the market. So we've now got a full suite of products that will enable customers to start small, but know that they can grow as their UC deployments start to grow across the enterprise. And to be able to do it in a form factor that an enterprise is comfortable with. So good, simple, easy out-of-the-box experience with documentation and systems management, and the ability to centrally deploy policy across the enterprise. So we bring that telco expertise on quality and scale into an enterprise form factor.
That's great, Todd. Thanks for being here today.
It's great to be here. Thank you.